Hey, this is Neil, the 604 Atheist, and you're watching Atheist Edge on the YouTube. Cheers.
Um, in time, you, I've caught glimpses of you. I know you're doing it almost like every other day, every 3 days. I mean, you're doing it regularly, right?
Yeah, like at the most like 3 days a week, but mostly like 1 or 2 days a week.
So,
Um,
what's it like
yeah.
working with Nicholas? And what have you learned about him? How's your relationship with him grown as co-hosts? And what's been going on with the channel over there?
It's good. He comes from a philosophy standpoint. And so I bring the psychology and he brings the philosophy. And so sometimes when we get on certain subjects, I can get very frustrated and like derailed a little bit. We talked about something, some like deep philosophical question, and I was like, oh God, I don't like it. But it was like the infinite regression or something like that. I don't know. It was
Infinite
something
regress?
weird. I'm not sure about infinite. I did say that just now, but like, it was like the problem of induction. That's what it was.
Ah, okay.
And I don't like it. So it was just really uncomfortable. And so, I think he might have either somebody else or just him deal with like the philosophy subjects, and have me deal with other things. But I've gotten to interview like Richard Carrier a lot. Ozzy has been a great person to have on the show. So we've gotten to talk about a lot of different things, and so our topics end up being really varied. But we're always coming together in a very structured way, um, to have a specific like conversation about a certain topic, and like it's really, I like that it's so structured, and so it is really different from the Atheist Edge style. Um,
I don't know whether to take offense or a compliment, but I think the
well,
former.
meaning that there's like such a time constraint, and there's
All right.
like we have to stay on this topic, and if I want to veer off to something else, we really can't. Like if I have a really good point to make, but it's a little off topic, I have to be very careful about whether I should or shouldn't do that. And so it is very limiting, where, I wish we could keep going with the conversation, or I wish that I could have been able to speak about something else, or make a protest or a disagreement about something, when it's not really the appropriate for the structure of the conversation. So if we're like interviewing somebody about their deconversion, or not deconversion, we do a lot of deconversions, but we've had somebody on that's like a religious person who is on to talk about their like history and their story of how they came to what they believe now. And there's a lot of, in that interview, there were a lot of like assumptions thrown out about atheism and about science and about, different things. And so I wanted to be able to jump in, and I became very uncomfortable that I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to jump in and challenge what he was saying, because it was just supposed to be him telling his story and his experience, and I wasn't really supposed to like fact check or like, come to task with him on that. So in that sense, I became very uncomfortable, because I didn't want to perpetuate something that I deemed as false and damaging, without being able to express my disagreement. And so that is something where I prefer the Atheist Edge structure in that instance, because it's like really, I'm given a lot more freedom to make a
Open
point
ended.
that I really want to make.
It's open ended.
Um, yeah, and I've just given a lot more freedom to have it be more of a conversation than like a structured interview. Um, but I've also, on Atheist Edge, we've done much more structured interviews. We've done a lot of those. So I just like that if it needs to turn into something different, our platform allows us to be able to make that choice, rather than it's always a structured interview. Um, but yeah, it's just different goals and different structures, and I really enjoy both. I like having to stay within the conversation because then it sometimes gets you in a different direction than you would have gone if you hadn't like been able to derail. But anyway,
if it veers down a philosophy rabbit hole, it's something outside of your expertise, then you have to just sit there and listen sometimes, which is
well,
probably
what's
difficult.
cool, yeah, we're actually doing a whole series on government, and I don't know too much about government in terms of like the structures of government and how a lot of these entities work and the point of them, and like it's things that voters really should know, but a lot of things are not taught in like a general public school course, and I think there's a reason for that. But the the basic thing is like I spend a lot of the time being like, oh, that's interesting, and like asking a bunch of questions rather than knowing as much as the guest knows. And so I really like that. I really love learning new things about these topics, and sometimes like things tie together and I get really excited about it. So it's really fun.
The day before yesterday, I was on that Christian channel, and it veered into protein synthesis and nucleotides and abiogenesis, which I can speak as a layman, but he came at me with published literature, and he was way more prepared than I was. And I think I did my best, even as a layman, but when you're out of your expertise, I mean, it's a whole different ball game than if you're talking about what you're good at,
Yeah, and I think it's always important when you are out of your depth to make that clear, to not attempt to speak on something that you don't have the chops to back up. And so I think that that's something the atheist community as a whole tends to take pretty seriously compared to other communities, because we don't have a fear of saying I don't know in general, at least when it comes to like a lot of the philosophical God questions. But
that's something. Two things I learned from that show on the Christians channel, that it's harder for believers to say I don't know. They really they fear that. It's like a plague to them. They hesitate to do it, and they cannot entertain a hypothetical. I gave them a hypothetical. I gave myself a hypothetical. If Jesus were to appear out of the clouds and descend onto earth, right, and start sweeping up his followers, what would you do? I immediately said I would fall to my knees and start repenting my ass off.
What? No.
That's exactly what I said, and I
Okay.
It doesn't mean what
I have a different response.
Sure. You would have.
You want my response?
I have tons of questions, to be sure, but immediately in that instant, my questions would be shelved. They would be tabled. The first thing I would do is say, oh shit, I was totally wrong. I would fall to my knees. And I know most atheists would not say that. This is what I think so. But what I'm saying is I was willing to entertain that hypothetical. Then I gave him a hypothetical, and I said, what if a non-carbon based life form, let's say silicon based, somewhere maybe outside like Pluto or somewhere in the Oort cloud, an asteroid with a fossilized non-carbon based life form, silicon based, and it didn't use DNA as its replicator, were to land on Earth, and all of the scientific community agreed this is a fossilized life form, it doesn't use DNA to replicate, and it is silicon based, not carbon based. If that were to happen and you see that with your own eyes, how would that change your view of God, the universe, souls, humans, extraterrestrial life? Did Jesus appear over on that planet? And he couldn't do it. He went back to his talking points. He could not entertain a hypothetical.
It's a big idea. I don't know. I mean, to say that they can't entertain a hypothetical, I think is a little bit of a stretch. But like,
it's been my experience.
Because that hypothetical would be very difficult for anybody, I think. But the hypothetical of if that were to happen, the first one,
Jesus coming down.
So can you tell me the whole hypothetical and I'll give you my response? Because that's an
Jesus
interesting thing.
appears in his grandeur with a choir of angels from the cloud tops. He descends on cavalry. Calvary? I always get that
Calvary.
confused.
There's two L's.
Cavalry is an army of horses, army on horseback.
Uh-huh.
Cavalry.
Cavalry
No.
is the horses.
Jesus.
Cavalry,
Cavalry
I think.
is the army of horses.
Yes.
Calvary. Anyway, the mountain that he's supposed to descend on, or Megiddo, or wherever he's supposed to descend. He comes down, he lands, and then throngs of people come up to him, and it's every news channel. You know, you flip the news on everywhere. Everyone's seeing it, right? And people just start disappearing in droves. Just rapture, right?
Okay.
I'm saying
I don't think I would know what was happening. I think I would just be like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like, what's happening? So that.
Well, you know the Bible well enough to know it's all according to Revelation.
I say that. I know, but I think that I wouldn't necessarily attribute it to that. Does that make sense? Like, I would kind of hold judgment of like.
I kind of think that
like
maybe
it seems like this.
That would be you playing dumb, I think, to be honest.
No, like honestly, like I think I would probably, because I tend to do that with most things. I tend to come at it from a very non-judgmental, skeptical lens. And so I think I would do the same thing with that as I do with everything, where, you know, I get the initial information and I'm like, okay, I have some more questions. What's going on, right? Because I don't easily come to a conclusion about things.
That would be enough for me. I'm going to just put it on record right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be it for me.
But also, I didn't believe in the rapture when I was a believer. So I think that would be difficult. Like, I think I would just, I don't know enough about the rapture and the scripture of the rapture to even recognize it if that were to happen. And that's what I mean too, is I don't think I would know enough about it. But also, like, the descending of angels don't look in the Bible the way that they look in like paintings. So it would be like a wheel that's lined with eyes, like this would be descending. Like, so the
Good job.
The version
You're
of
right.
The version of reality would be very different if it were literal and actually true. I think that how it looks in the minds of Christians would be very different from how it would actually look.
I could beef up the hypothetical to a point where I could make it to where it was undeniable that it was Jesus the Savior, but then it would take away from the hypothetical because, of course.
Well, and there's just so much of stuff in the Bible that we know is only there because of the influence of other religions and things, you know. So for that reason too, I would have to assume that it is not related to that, because to me, the Bible and that story is very discredited already.
Let's say it's Jim over here already on his knees repenting his ass off, and then you think, hey, that might be Zoroaster that just landed, right?
Yeah.
So maybe
Jim
Buddha,
is, you know?
Well, Gautama was an actual human. Siddhartha Gautama was an actual, well, Jesus was an actual human too, yeah. So anyway,
Horus.
Right? Yeah. So you say, oh, it looks like more like Zoroaster, which is the prequel to Christianity in many ways, and that's undeniable. Comment section if you want to challenge me on that. We're in my field of expertise, so I can tell you how Zoroaster and some of these other earlier gods were the antithesis, not antithesis, but the prelude to Christianity. So you say it's Zoroaster. Then here's dumb Jim on his knees. Even still,
I just think that it would require a lot of assumptions, you know.
In any sense, no matter who's descending, it would probably behoove you to start. Oh boy.
No.
Well, first off, our worldview is out of the window.
No, it does. It
supernatural.
isn't.
That's a supernatural claim.
No, but
I mean, that's a
that's the thing,
supernatural event.
is that what you are seeing and what's happening, I think we would still look at it through a naturalistic lens. What's happening and how, how can we figure this out? So I still think that,
Not
because
in this case. I think that
this isn't going to happen, like it doesn't,
that's
know
why
what
it's
I
a
mean?
hypothetical.
But the hypothetical requires the world we live in to not be the world we live in. You know what I mean? Like, the world we live in does not make sense if there's some sort of higher power guiding things for a multitude of reasons that we've covered on this channel.
Many times.
The nonsensical, aspects of human anatomy and the anatomy of some other animals. Like, there's just things that point to natural selection and things way more than a Christian worldview. So because of all the flaws and because of all the starting points of Christianity, I think that if that were to happen, we would be in a different reality. Like, that's not the reality we live in, because it's not the reality we see, and it's something that has predictive power and value.
We got off on a little tangent. My larger point was that Christians what I learned from day before yesterday's show was I didn't learn it then. It was just broke the camel's back, because I've seen it so many times. Christians cannot entertain a hypothetical. They will always.
But that's the thing is that
we are
that the same way that I can't, though.
We are more.
Same way.
Well,
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, we are. I think we non-believers are inherently more intellectually honest in that sense.
Well, I think that we have more practice at changing our worldview. If you are a deconverted person, you're a cradle atheist, a lot of other people are, but especially the people who have changed their fundamental worldview like I have, I think that we're more practiced at entertaining different types of ideas, because we're practiced at fundamentally changing our own, like, self-identity and our understanding of the world around us. So there's that. But I think that the same way that I can't honestly entertain that hypothetical, because I don't believe that that's the reality that we live in. So it's like, it's really difficult for me to imagine that different world. And that's the same issue that I think Christians would have, is if you give them a hypothetical that makes it an atheistic world, that's not the reality that they live in. And so I think that's where you get an issue with at least having a hard time, and it's not being impossible, but having a hard time honestly entertaining that. And that's not to say that they're doing that like just to be contrarian or like on purpose, but it's just very difficult to entertain the idea of something that is fundamentally against your basic understanding of reality.
I can think right off the top of my head a half a dozen shows that I've been on representing the cradle atheist.
Yep.
One in particular is called Fully Deconverted, which all they do, this entire channel, is interviewing people and their deconversion story. They had me on for the first time ever as a cradle atheist. Like, what's it like to have never believed?
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking, has End Time ever done that? And I'm whoring myself out now. When are you going to get me on?
I don't know if Nick was a cradle atheist.
We're pretty rare in the community.
Because Nick doesn't really talk about, I've never heard him speak about his time as a believer.
Really?
Right? And it might just be that it doesn't come up.
Wow.
I've like talked about it. But I think End Time as a show is about a lot more things than atheism. So we talk about politics, we talk about current events, we talk about all kinds of things. So like the subject of atheism doesn't always come up anyway, let alone our previous beliefs. So I don't know. I'd have to ask him actually what his deconversion is, or if he has one, if he was a cradle atheist, because I actually don't know.
whenever I go and peruse that channel, I see a lot of current events. You guys always record live, which we do pre-recorded.
Mhm.
Do you feel pressure to stay on top of current events prior to coming into one of those shows?
Well, that's the thing, is that again, I am blissfully unaware of a lot of things, and I don't think I can like confidently say, you know, that I know where to find the most current events, you know, like I don't know. So I'm not very versed in research online, and I understand the value of it and I would love to get better at it. But Nick is the one who not only does research of current events and really stays on top of that, but he also has a huge source of different people around the world who update him as well, who will send him things that are happening around the world that uh, we're able to break before major news stations break. So that's really cool. We end up being the first to say something that's happened before anybody else online or on television has said it. And so I end up being somebody who is sort of a reactor to the news, because most of what he says has happened, I don't know yet. And so he will tell me live on the thing, and he gets my genuine
Yes,
reaction,
that
where
could
it's
be.
like, it's
Yes,
fun, you know? And
that could actually be a
yeah,
boon to the channel to see an actual genuine reaction to the
right.
news. Yeah.
And that's
So
exactly what it is, because again, I never know myself usually. So it's
if
funny
I
because
were to if I were
would
to
be
tell
like
you,
about Trump or about coronavirus, and I'm like, what? You know, like that's my, if you've seen it, that's what I do a lot of the time.
I haven't, but I'm sure I've seen it on our channel enough to know that you do it,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're known for just getting so frustrated. Do it, Courtney.
Ugh.
Yeah, there it is. Ugh. That's the Courtney growl.
Ugh.
Yeah, so I have seen that numerous times. So if I were to talk to you about the situation in the fraudulent election of Belarus and the subsequent protests and riots in Belarus,
Nope.
and yeah, nothing.
Nope. I don't know.
I don't. I just actually listened because doing this job, I'm going from door to door, so I have NPR on the radio. So I'm hearing a lot of world
Always.
news. Yeah.
I love NPR.
Oh gosh.
But
But
that's
you
the
know
thing,
what?
is I'm not driving much anymore. So I used to listen to it only in my car, and I don't have a
It's
radio.
and
So
this is someone who's I lean left. This is heavily left bias news. I'm gonna say it.
well,
I
okay.
want something
Mm-mm.
more
I don't
centered.
know about that.
It
I think
is.
I have heard some right wing arguments as well, and they give equal time in terms of
They
politics
do.
to
They do.
conservatives and progressives. But I do think that they are publicly funded,
Yep.
and they don't have a purposeful left leaning slant.
Oh, they
They don't.
certainly do.
I don't think they do. I think it depends on the interviewer. I think that sometimes they'll have an interviewer
They
who's
are
a
unbiased
little
in the
bit
fact.
aggressive, but most of the time, especially with like the world news updates, they're very professional, and they have a lot of like journalistic ethics.
I'm
But it's
gonna.
why I support them.
Um, I thought of a drinking game while I was driving because every time I turn on NPR, within the first three sentences, I hear race, racial tension, race war, or COVID. So I thought of a drinking game. Every time you
What?
hear the word race or COVID, you
No.
take a shot. That's NPR now.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, it would be maybe on the news part, but most of the time when I turn the NPR on, they're in the middle of some show that has nothing to do with any of those things usually, you know.
Okay,
But
well, your experience is different. We both listen to the same NPR station. We're both in Dallas Fort Worth area.
no,
It's
but
it's
I
it's
just mean
all
like,
dangers of COVID, which okay, granted, we need to have the facts, so that's good. But I think they're pushing this racial narrative to a point where they're almost, dare I say this, they're almost intentionally causing tension. Yeah, Does it feel like that to you?
I mean, it's been a while since I've consistently listened to NPR. I do a lot more like YouTube music and podcasts that are through NPR, like Radiolab and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, there was a time when I was listening to it multiple hours a day, every day, and I've always found them to be almost frustratingly so non-biased, because I am very left-leaning, but I've found them to, give equal time to different politicians, but they do take people to task. They do ask challenging questions and try to get them to actually answer the questions they're asking instead of like dodging things. And that's really politicians on either side of the aisle. But what I was gonna say is that because like when something is publicly funded and well informed, I think that it tends to lean left just naturally, because the right side of a lot of issues, the correct side of a lot of issues, tend to be left leaning, like social issues and, what to do about certain things. I think that the right side of history leans left. And so I think that if you're asking the general population their opinion, the general population statistically leans left, especially with social issues and other things. And a lot of the time in the last, I don't know, I forget how many elections, but for the last number of elections, the only times that the delegates went against the popular vote was for a conservative side. So it's kind of,
that is true.
and so the popular vote historically for quite a long time has consistently leaned left. And I think that it's because of the districting and things like that have made the nation as a whole seem more right than it is. And so I don't think that being politically right leaning falls on a 50-50 divide. I don't think that. So that would be my take on it, is that if it's journalistic, if it has journalistic integrity, if it's publicly funded, if it's a representation of the people, I think especially worldwide leans left, because NPR is a worldwide station. It's partnered with the BBC. So you have the British and you have America. And so I think if you're combining British and America, especially, that is very heavy leaning left. And I think it's a result of a reflection of the people than a reflection of an intent to purposefully lean left. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And also, if that's the
agree
case,
to the most part. Yeah. I will
because
say
I think that they make a very big effort to not do that. But I think that if they do, then that would make sense.
I will say one good thing about NPR. Major donors of that program, of that system, they will not hesitate to do an episode on that puts them in a bad light. For instance, I just heard one the other day about Zuckerberg and Facebook. Facebook is a major donor to NPR, and they made a what's it called at the beginning?
Disclaimer.
A disclaimer. They transparency, that they said, okay, just so you know, Facebook gives us a lot of money, but here's this news clip about us attacking the shit out of Facebook for whatever reason.
And that's a huge difference, because you also have a big, like when you listen to NPR, you know what's an opinion piece and what is news. And that line is drawn.
Yes.
And so that you know what's entertainment, what's opinion, and what's news. And something like Fox News just completely blurs that line, and just you can't even fucking see it. So there's that. There's also a complete lack of corrections made when mistakes are made on a lot of these stations, but NPR makes corrections when they make a mistake. They'll come back, and on the broadcast they'll say, on this day at this time we made this mistake and this is the correction.
Yeah.
That
Never
gives
hear that
journalistic
on.
integrity.
You don't.
Yes.
Do you hear that on MSNBC or CNN even?
Probably not. No.
Yeah, I think
And so
both sides
there's
don't
that.
do that.
Right.
But
so those two things are big, indicators of journalistic excellence and journalistic integrity. So having a big difference between opinion and news, and knowing the difference, showing the difference between those two, and making sure your audience knows that. Because, something like Huffington Post or BuzzFeed, you get an article, quote unquote, that is a opinion piece, and it's written in a way that makes you expect there to be stats or sources, but there aren't any at all. So that's the thing, is that sometimes a lot of these online and radio and television news stations will parade themselves as news, but they're actually not acting as news.
I wish we disagreed more. It would be a much better show if I just goddamn always agree with you. This is not a good show.
You and I disagreed a minute ago, but I explained what I value about NPR.
Well, okay, I said something good about NPR. Now I'm going to say something a little critical of NPR.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to a lot of it in my car. They push a racial narrative that it feels to me is driving a wedge between in groups, and it's creating tribalism.
Uh-oh.
And I think that the only true news, if you want to get it right off the ticker, right off the feed, is Associated Press or Reuters. Anything to left or everything else is to the left or right of that. And I think NPR leans way left, and that's all I'll say about it.
I don't know. I'd have to check out the racial divide things, because I don't know. I haven't listened to it. I haven't listened to NPR consistently.
I've turned my radio off in disgust because it got so bad. And this is a liberal talking. It got so bad where you're trying to get people to throw bricks through Starbucks windows right now. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get people to light garbage cans on fire right now.
Well, and what I love about NPR though too is that there's kind of something for everybody on that show, and I really love like the Moth Radio Hour and Snap Judgment. I love the storytelling stuff, and the game shows are really fun. But I like that the news is told every hour on the hour, so like that if it's on the hour, then you're going to get news versus like a show. And I love like Radio Lab. I just fell in love with Radio Lab.
I love Radio Lab. It's awesome.
Always. And This American Life is really amazing. Yep. What is that? The Terry Gross is it's not The Takeaway. The Takeaway.
But even This American Life, doesn't it? I don't know. This might be biased, but doesn't it feel like there's almost an underlying demonization of the? Gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this. A little bit of demonization of not just whites, but the white American male. A little bit.
I don't know.
It almost feels like
This American Life talks about all kinds of different topics. So yeah, I don't know.
It just feels. I don't know.
Well,
maybe it's me and my biases, but it almost feels like a personal attack.
But again, you have experts coming on and giving their opinion about certain things, who are actual real experts in exactly what they're talking about. And I think a lot of what you see with television news is people who aren't versed in the subject at all speaking with their opinion on it. And there's a big push for that because it's cheaper to just have a talking head give their opinion than to fly an expert in and have an actual interview, and also to do research too. Like to be news, you have to be able to afford real journalism. And what's done on, say, Fox News is they prioritize opinions being made, and just it's a lot easier to fund something like this right now, where you and I are two people having a conversation about a topic. That's a lot cheaper than to invest in real journalism.
You got that right. Have you seen your paycheck?
So that's the thing. I know. And that's the thing, is that you and I can do this on a hobby level, and Fox News pays the same amount as us, except, you know, they might just pay somebody an hourly wage to be on camera, but like that's it. Like they don't independently source, they don't do firsthand sources. And so that's, you know what I mean? Like, but NPR does. NPR will find out, you know, they go all across the world and they will interview people in Kuwait and interview people in, you know, it's nuts. Like, it's amazing. And it's a completely different level of journalism than what we see now.
I'm
usually.
addicted to Dr. Rachel Maddow. I will admit that. But I will also admit that everything that comes out of her mouth is an opinion piece. And I'm fully aware of that. It's on MSNBC.
Oh yeah, I don't watch it.
You've been citing Trump news, which basically is Fox News, right?
Yeah.
Fox
News.
On the flip side of the coin, there's MSNBC, which is it's the same thing.
Yeah,
in reverse. I mean, and although I'm a huge fan
exactly the same,
of Dr. Maddow,
yeah,
I am willing to admit that it's almost like comfort food. It's almost like that turkey dinner, because I want someone that agrees, and she's telling me everything I want to hear. And I know that there's those, you know, Neanderthal knuckle dragging conservatives on the other side. They just want, like my dad, and his wife just watch Fox News because it's comforting. They just want, they want someone who agrees with them. They just want those.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to send you this analysis that was done. I forget. It's a podcast that I listened to on NPR. It was an NPR-based podcast, but it was a analysis, or not analysis. It was interviews done by people who know very intimately how Fox News started, and it's really, really interesting. I forget what the name of the podcast is. It might have been directly from NPR, or it actually might not have been, but it's something where they take a person, they do a whole episode on a single person, and they will break down in what way they are a powerful person in the world right now, how they got there, and what kind of power they wield and how they wield it. Like it breaks down big hitters of the world and like how they got there, and basically explains what real power looks like in the world today. And one of the first episodes they did was not on a person, but on Fox News, and how it started, what the purpose of it was, what the aim was. And it was started to parrot a conservative White House talking points. So it began in order to parade itself as news, but always to be a direct mouthpiece of a conservative White House. When a conservative is in the White House, this is supposed to be something that comes from the White House, is directly, like, the talking points are from the White House, but are seen as independent news, and especially opinion pieces seen as real news. And so that, for that reason, I don't know that I would put MSNBC in the same category, because I don't know how that station was started and if they have a different aim that's similar on the other side. But I do know that they are extremely like left propaganda-esque, but I don't know if they're at the same level as Fox.
If Biden wins in November, could you see MSNBC becoming the state news-run media?
Well, that's what I mean, is that I know that Fox News was started that way because we know that from interviews and from the intent of the origins of the show. But I don't know if that's the case for MSNBC or CNN, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know enough about those channels, but it's a conversation worth happening because, again, the importance of the free press cannot be understated, and that's why something like Fox News is so damaging, is that it makes itself seem like, to the people who believe in it, to be real news that they can rely on, especially people who are suspicious of the government. But it's specifically, it's like a little bait and switch of, we're going to give you government endorsed conservative propaganda that is exactly like what we've seen in Germany, you know? And that's the problem, is that news is not supposed to be that. It's supposed to stand apart from its government, hold its government accountable. It is not supposed to be taken over by the government, but seen as separate from the government. That's the problem.
Lalandra Raw. She has her own channel.
Aaron
Of course,
Ross'
she's married.
wife?
Yeah, she's married to Aaron. Yeah.
Oh, I like her so much.
Would it be not the coolest thing on earth to get her on this show as
Oh my
as an
gosh.
actual host?
Has she expressed an interest?
No, I haven't even. This
Okay.
this is an exclusive. So
okay.
if she
the
watches
first time
this,
the first time I really had a conversation with her, we were at the Pastor Jeffress protest, and she had a camera and she was recording. And she came up to me and just asked me, did a little interview with me on her own, for her own channel. And I love her. Like, she's so awesome. That would be really cool.
I don't know if it's even doable. I'm shooting for the stars. I mean, she would be intelligent, quick wit, racial diversity, another female. She can bring all kinds of different perspectives to bear. I think that I would, but you know what? I would become the right leaning.
You're talking about affirmative action, man.
No, well, it almost
like
no. Just like Joe Biden. Joe Biden
I feel like
said,
you've argued against affirmative action, but you're seeing the value of it right now.
only in the fact that, okay, did you hear Joe Biden's last speech after he picked Kamala? Okay, he said his choice to pick. So when he said, I'm going to pick a woman, he said that early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my first initial reaction as the American white male was, why don't you pick someone the most qualified? Why does it have to? No, this is my initial. No, listen, this is my initial reaction. Why does it have to be a woman? Just pick the most qualified. That was my initial reaction, right?
Okay.
But the way he explained it was, I want my administration to represent America, right?
Yeah.
And if that means whatever you call affirmative action, that let's do a representation of America, right?
Yeah.
Kamala is Asian, black, and woman. Why not? Why not do? And it's
okay.
I don't consider it affirmative action. I don't consider it affirmative action.
So I do have one comment though. So the most qualified candidate, I agree about wanting them to be qualified.
Would be
However,
Pete Buttigieg or Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay. So what? Are you asking a question?
No, I'm saying I think the most qualified would be Pete Buttigieg or Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay. So all I'm going to say about that though is that the level of experience allotted to minorities is always going to be more limited than to white men in terms of politics and even law. So that's the issue, is that if everybody was given the opportunity from the outset to make it to that kind of position and have an equal footing of how much experience they bring to the table, that would be one thing. Also, the quality of experience is another. You know, the number of years in a system might be more of a corruption factor than a positive factor. So there's that. So that's what I would say about it, is that you have to be careful when you're talking about affirmative action and about most qualified candidate, because part of what affirmative action is trying to fix is that the opportunity for minorities from the outset, like from the beginning all the way into that position, is skewed. So a person who is best for the job might be the most qualified, but what we define as most qualified has to include people who haven't been given the same levels of opportunity, like, you know, somebody who hasn't been able to do their 2 years of internship in a field.
We finally disagree on something.
Okay, but that
I
again,
think you're talking about
doesn't,
equity instead of equality.
No. It doesn't mean that you put somebody that's not qualified. I'm just saying that I think in order to level the playing field, that has to not only come from the bottom up, but from the top down. And so what he's saying is, because it's politics, it's about representation. And so that makes sense to me, what you said.
Kamala
but I just feel that,
yeah.
And so I feel like it's the same thing with directors, is that traditionally writers, producers, and directors of movies are white men traditionally, and you have a huge saturation of the market of that, and a huge overrepresentation of straight white men being represented in the higher award shows, even though that's not representative of the number of minorities doing incredible films. And that has a lot more to do with money and campaigns for awards than actual merit. So what I'm saying is that female directors might not have the level of experience of male directors, but it doesn't make them less qualified because of the nature of the job. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the Academy Awards one year in particular, that there was a lot of kerfuffle about a lack of racial diversity. If you look at the Academy Awards one, it exactly equaled the percentage. There's only 13% of African Americans in the country, and it almost exactly mirrored the population. And there was still some trouble with that.
But that 13% doesn't necessarily reflect the percentage of content that is produced by African American producers, directors, writers, versus, you know, like that level of the population might reflect the number of viewers, but not what's being created.
Right.
And so that was an issue that was brought up, is that there are a lot of female and other minority producers, directors, and writers who are in the marketplace, but who aren't given the opportunity because of their lack of experience. And it's almost like, you know, starting out with your first job with your degree, you're not hired because you don't have the experience, but you can't gain the experience because no one will hire you. So that's an issue, is that the women and other minorities, they gain experience in other ways without having the same kind of level of credentials. So they're still just as qualified, but they can't put it on paper the same way that other people can.
So what have we learned from today's session? 4 things that Courtney and I agree too much, that we definitely need a third host. That host should be a darker skinned, transsexual, gay, conservative, and that October. I know, the purple unicorn.
Yeah, yeah.
And October 3rd, I'm still pushing to make that an in-person session.
But I think this is fun. This is face to face, technically.
It's not as good.
Yeah.
You know what Atheist Edge is known for is, okay, everyone can have Richard Carey on the show. At the drop of, they can have Richard Carey on their show tomorrow. But we've had Richard Carrier sleeping on our couch for 3 days. That's the difference. He's been right there with us, hanging out with us.
You had sleeping on your couch has been Alex Jules, Richard Carrier, probably Aaron Ra.
Yeah, for brief moments, yeah.
Yeah. Who else has been on your couch?
Oh, Matt Dillahunty.
I've slept on
Matt
your
Dillahunty.
couch. Yeah.
He hasn't
Did he
slept
sleep
on the
your
couch.
couch?
No, he's been hanging out on my couch.
Yeah. I passed out for a couple hours on your couch. I've slept.
That's what Atheist Edge is
martinis
known for.
in me.
Yeah, we have. We're okay. In person is so much better than.
I know.
So yeah, it's the condom issue. Yeah. Sex is great. With a condom, it's great, but without a condom, it's so much better. Does that make?
I understand.
Okay.
Unprotected recording sessions would be more fun.
No, October 3rd, yes. Unprotected October 3rd would be so much, yeah.
Oh my God.
No, it's probably going to get scrapped, but I'm going to keep.
I don't know, man.
I'm going to keep it on the schedule.
Well, I guess the only thing, I guess we can just look at the number of cases and stuff, and if it continues to go down and stuff, then that might be okay.
And December 3rd, who knows? I'll keep pushing the envelope, but at least I got something on a schedule right now.
Are you okay with wearing masks on camera?
Yes, absolutely. And my green screen isn't big enough to distance us more than 6 feet. If you see my green screen, see, it's not that big.
I've never seen that before, where you go over.
See my green screen? It's not.
Oh my gosh.
So if we can't social distance between us right now.
That was my point, though, is that because of the green screen, we can't really social distance.
We can get
with
close
that.
to feet.
But if we don't use the green screen, then we could do it.
Yeah, with some lavalier mics.
If we did like a B cam to where we had one camera set up and another camera set up, and we just sync the audio.
Yeah. All right.
We could do that.
Anyway, okay. Plug us.
If we can sit far enough apart from each other, we could do it.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. I'm going to go with that. Plug us. Now plug your other channel and plug yourself. That sounded dirty.
Yeah.
That sounded kind of dirty.
I'm going to tell you something because it's really funny. So one of my friends, her mom used to have a vibrator that had a cord that would plug into the wall that wasn't battery operated or charged or whatever. So anytime her mom was really upset, she would do that old Glade commercial of plug it in, plug it in. That's I love this channel because I can't say that on In Time.
Really? Oh,
I mean, I could. I probably could, but it's a different dynamic.
We only dropped 3 F-bombs this whole 2 hours.
So I am Courtney. I am still actually the PR representative for Metroplex Atheist. They kept me on as a board member and also a official representative if media attention is needed. So there's that. So I still, if anything happens, if we do any campaigns or anything, that will be my face. I do a few things. I do In Time, which is a great show. Check that out. We also still do Atheist Edge, even though you and I haven't actually produced a show together for Atheist Edge for quite a while. We just had a lot on the backlog, which is good. But you can also see me on different channels. Women of Deconversion still has,
really?
It's not it's not still active, but there are lots of
right.
old episodes still on there that are all at least a year old by now. But it's a great set of conversations. And I was also on Truth Wanted, and so there's a lot of different shows and things that I've been on. But my original YouTube home has always been Atheist Edge. I think the first time I ever did anything for YouTube was those Ask an Atheist events for Metroplex Atheists, and that was, I believe, on Bradley's channel, a Christian channel, but it was also linked back to Atheist Edge. And then we started our little channel. When did we start that? What year?
2017, April 1st.
Oh my gosh. April Fools.
Yeah, it was April Fool's Day 2017 with Aaron and the old host and you. You and I
So
are the only ones that have survived.
I would have been 26 going on 27. I would have turned 27.
We've
April,
gone through
April 10th.
2 production managers since then, and Sam's gone, TJ's gone, Lance is gone, and now Chris is gone. So it's just you and me.
Mm-hmm.
So we were looking for another. All right.
I mean, well, the original was you and
me and
Sam.
You, me, and Sam.
We had one producer helping us out a lot, but that was it. That was just us.
Yep.
So we're the last of the originals.
Exactly. We have mutated into a new species now. And so now the gloves are off, the commandments are gone, the building bridges is gone. Courtney has already said
it's still there.
Oh, okay.
Building bridges is still there.
All right. Well, I still get to block fuckers from now on.
Well, but I think that's still building bridges, because if the conversation isn't productive, then you make it productive again in order to build those bridges.
If you see on social media that I resort to name calling from time to time, which I have never done before, you're not going to get upset. Because
yes, I will get upset.
Okay.
I told you I didn't agree with all of it.
All right. You know what? You're 50% of the channel. If you see something on social media where I get a little too over the top, then I'm
not going to see it. You can get away with it.
Good.
Sure.
Awesome.
But I think by and large, we should, as much as possible, lead by example and be the change of social media that we would like to see in the world, as Gandhi said.
Those days are gone, my friend. I hate to say it.
No, I think they're only gone if you decide that they're gone. You can still lead with integrity.
All right. I will take that into consideration.
Okay.
All right.
Like Matrix. Tokyo Drift from the Tokyo Drift. That's funny.
Whatever you and Jason just said will probably be in the outtakes, just so you know.
That's fun. I'm talking about our cats playing.
Oh.
You got a girly drink there.
Totally. You saw that. I mean, I'm busted.
You usually have,
but it's 90 calories. It's 90 calories.
You just always like the calories.
12 hours a day. So, like, one of these packs a punch. Because
I kind of want a cocktail now, man.